So today we're going to cover Lp(a). There was a great article that I've been waiting for in the New England Journal about antisense drugs. Now, what the heck is that? And you know, a lot of folks are going to be saying, what the heck is Lp(a)? And maybe I don't really have any interest in that because I don't have it. If you're thinking you don't have it, you might want to just make sure, because Lp(a) has been one of those dirty little secrets that folks didn't share, docs didn't share. Most docs don't even know about it. And it's a known, actually well-known cardiovascular risk. It is a variation of LDL. And it's actually an LDL, which for some reason, we can talk about a little bit later, attracts oxidized LDL. So we've never had at least many people felt like we didn't have an effective treatment. So the standard response was, well, you know what? We don't have anything to treat it with, any drugs or anything. So let's just not even talk about it. And let's handle all. For example, I think it was the Mayo cardiology medical director said, well, let's just give them statins. Well, statins don't really help. Lp(a) is an issue. And it started to hit what we call prime time. I've got several different videos on Lp(a) hitting prime time. When Bob Harper had his heart attack, he shared, yep, it was due to Lp(a). So making a lot of progress in that space. Now, so that's one reason that you may want to know about it, because most of us have never been tested for it. Another reason is the prevalence is really high. It's between 20 and 40%, depending on what you want to use for a cut point in terms of levels. Now, we have used niacin in the past, and again, we'll get into a little bit more about all of that as we get into that part of the presentation. But just a couple of other things that we'll be covering. The event in Orlando coming up Friday, February 28th. We are, the 50% discount is coming to an end in, I think it's about a week, the 31st, 10 days, something like that. I know a lot of people have been asking a lot of questions about it. So just wanted to let you know, if you want to get in under the discount, the 50% discount, go ahead and start making some choices over the next week or so. There's also been a huge amount of questions about the labs specific to these events. And I'm going to go into a little bit more detail. A lot of people don't really get how it works. And we keep having people saying, well, if you're talking about labs at the event, then you must just be talking about finger sticks. No, we're talking about full-blown panels with inflammation panel, OGTT, insulin survey, cholesterol panel, profiles, and I'll go through some of that a little bit later too. But we're going to talk about the standard agenda that we cover on, excuse me, I got a little feedback there. The standard agenda that we cover on the live events, plus the LP, you know, the weekly update, the Lp(a) discussion for today. After we do that, then we'll do a little bit of questions and answers and go back into the labs and the discount on the Louisville event. One other thing, just a reminder about the CIMT events. David Mintz has a CIMT event at Birmingham on February 8th, Birmingham, Alabama. It has not been that well registered, subscribed, and we understand. We didn't expect that. Birmingham's not a major population center like LA. Now, if we don't get, I think it's 10. If David doesn't get 10, we will have to cancel because we won't be able to cover costs. Let me just tell you briefly how those work. David is a professional speaker. He's a nutritionist, a trained nutritionist, and has spent most of his life speaking about health and nutrition. For the past decade or so, almost all of his talk has been focused on stuff that we do. Cardiovascular inflammation, insulin resistance, diet, lifestyle, and their impact on health. So he knows the Bale-Dunning method. He knows what we do. He's actually been saying, you know what, I've had to do some retooling and updating on some of the nutrition aspect. It's very interesting what's going on with nutrition just over the past few years. So for the CIMT events, David will take one of his regular events, stay an extra day in the same town, and open it up to the YouTube channel subscribers, the YouTube channel viewers, so you can get your own CIMT local to you. So that's what that is. Again, if you want to, if you're near Birmingham, go in, take a look, and you can get all of them on cardioriskus.org. You can also get all of them on the membership page. I will, hopefully I'll get some time, and we will, we'll go through the membership page to show you exactly how to find that. You go to the membership page, you see CIMT tour, you click on that and you get the whole schedule. So again, back for today, the YouTube live event for today, Lp(a), new treatment, antisense drugs, New England Journal of Medicine, as usual, with no new errors and omissions to cover for today. Then we'll discuss the Orlando event lab discussion, 50% discount, Birmingham, and the CIMT events. So to the Lp(a), as I mentioned, Lp(a) has not been covered very well. Again, docs felt like there wasn't much they could do for it, and so they just didn't even test for it and didn't talk to patients about it, didn't learn about it. And then Bob Harper had a heart attack a couple of years ago, and everybody thought, well, you know, this guy's like, he's on TV and he's a celebrity known for being in shape, and he had a heart attack. Yeah, he did. And he announced later it was due to Lp(a). Now, what is Lp(a)? As I said before, it's something that we've known about, at least in the research areas, even if the standard medical community didn't know what to do with it. It's a variation of LDL. And if you look at it, here's maybe the geeky part, the biochemistry part. This is this whole image is what we call a lipoprotein. It is a picture of an LDL. The lipoprotein is a protein that takes cholesterol and forms it into a ball so it doesn't form a big clot or embolus in the bloodstream, which is mostly water, over 90% water. Now, this pink reddish part represents, it's called ApoB. It is the protein that holds that cholesterol together. Now, what's different about Lp(a) from other LDL is this Kringle repeats section. It looks like the genetics on this one got a little bit confused and created a long chain that's hanging off. We used to think that that little chain maybe actually hooked into the endothelium. Maybe that was the cause of the inflammation. But more recently, we're finding out something very different. For some reason, this ApoB protein appears to attract and hold oxidized LDL. I know a lot of people on our channel watch Ivor Cummins as well. Ivor Cummins has got a couple of good videos on the importance of oxidized LDL. That appears to be the bad actor in terms of inflammation and getting in and forming plaque. So back to that original image, how have we treated Lp(a) in the past? As I mentioned, Mayo said, well, you know, just give them statins. We know that doesn't help Lp(a) any, but we think it'll help LDL in general. Well, that's one way, and clearly it's got its merits. The Europeans have always given niacin. I've always given niacin. A lot of docs that I know use niacin instead. Niacin will most reliably, I'd say what, 60 to 80% of the time, Niacin will give us a 30% drop in LP(a). Again, Europeans use it. The Americans, you know, just sometimes drive me crazy, as you know. Apheresis, that's where it's like dialysis, where you take the blood out of the body, you filter it, and you put it back in. That does work, but it only lasts for 2 weeks, and the body makes LP(a) again. So that's not a great solution. ApoA, antisense oligonucleotide. That sounds very technical. That's actually what we're going to talk about today. That was what the New England Journal article is about. But what is it? So here's the thing. If you go back to the genetic processes, the process for making a protein starts with DNA translated into, or transcribed. I can't remember whether there's some differentiate on that. Anyhow, DNA is turned into a mirror RNA image. And then the RNA image is used to translate into a protein, an amino acid sequence. So the antisense drugs actually fit into this messenger RNA that's going to be used to make that amino acid protein sequence for the ApoB to make LP(a). That drug then is made, and it's just sort of blocks that next process. So hopefully that helps you begin to get a little bit of understanding about what antisense oligonucleotides means. So antisense means it's on the other side, it's the mirror image, and it's an oligo, meaning a small batch, and again, it blocks that next process. I've also done videos on where L-carnitine has been shown to help as well. I think we can all agree, unless you've got like world-class level LP(a), you might want to continue to focus more on things like niacin, maybe carnitine, because the antisense drugs were working very well, getting 80% impact, and that's unprecedented. I have seen one patient get an 80% impact from niacin. And this was a patient that really, you know, her LP(a) numbers were like 70 or 80, and I think. So those weren't really bad numbers. On the other end of the spectrum, we've got folks like Joe Riley. You remember Joe did a video with us, maybe a couple of videos. And I think it was, I mean, it was the highest number I've ever seen. It was like over 800, maybe over 1,000. Joe also shared with us that he'd had the aortic valve calcification that you get with this. So again, now that's somebody that would clearly focus on making sure that we get the access to the the antisense drugs as soon as possible. This is one of those articles on carnitine. Now let's get back to the New England Journal article itself. As you see here, it was New England Journal, January 16th of this year, 2020. LP(a) reduction in persons with cardiovascular disease. Semikas is the lead author, and as I said, this is a big deal. It's something that many of us have been waiting for quite a while. And the methods, they just did a double-blind randomized control trial. They used different levels, different amounts, 20, 40, or 60 milligrams of the antisense drug, AKCEA, ApoA, LRX. You know, again, no need to try to remember any of that. Up to 80% reduction. So reliably, but that was at the higher dosage levels. So obviously, I've got a lot of patients that are very smart. They keep an eye on this. One of I don't remember if it was one of my patients or Nutranuva. somebody I've talked with a few times out in, I think, LA. Anyhow, somebody alerted me to this, and it's, again, a great article, a great development, and whoever alerted me, thank you for letting me know. One of the reasons I don't remember is that I've gotten emails and calls from multiple of my Lp(a) patients, and they're all asking the same question. How can I get into the next study? How can I get access to this? Again, it's not to maybe overuse a phrase. Getting this medication is not quite ready for prime time. They're going to need to do a little bit more work on it. And again, there's a lot of demand. And I think one of the things that you're going to see happening is now this doctors in standard medicine, maybe even your own cardiologist, will actually start testing for Lp(a) because we're beginning to see we've got a treatment now. Like some of the other treatments, like PCSK9s, for example, I expect these things are going to be maybe tens of thousands of dollars per year until the patent breaks and/or there's significant competition in the area. I will tell you, for again, the majority of my Lp(a) patients, niacin has done a great job. So it's really it's a great thing. It's a wonderful thing to happen. It's gonna complicate things a little bit more because now there's gonna be the question of, okay, is this worth the new drug and its added expense, or do we wanna continue to work with the old school stuff, niacin, carnitine, stuff like that. Okay, let me see if there was anything else to cover on that. No, just mentioned the cardiovascular disease, the calcific aortic valve stenosis, which we mentioned, that Joe shared with us, and the comment that it's not the hook, the Kringle repeats going into the endothelium. It's more of the fact that for some reason Lp(a) tends to attract oxidized LDL. Now here's the images. Here's what happened. Again, for the higher dosages, you were getting 80% decrease in Lp(a). Really, really impressive and unprecedented. This basically showed the impact on the other LDL, ApoB, stuff like that, HDL, triglycerides. As you see, very minimal impact on the other stuff, just focused on Lp(a). And by the way, very few side effects. The major side effect was irritation of the injection site. So that was it on the New England Journal article for the Lp(a). Errors and omissions, as I mentioned before, nothing new in that space. We talked a little bit about the Orlando event. I am going to come back out of the show mode for a second and see if we can actually get, you know something, this is a problem. This happened to me last week. What happens when I break that live chat session out is it's whiting out on me. Okay, 147 degrees west. Good morning. Is there live today? Tom Tart, not sure. We'll leave it open for a few and wait. YouTube channel indicated there is. Ditto. Okay, so there's a lot of discussion beforehand. I apologize. We're continuing to try to work through getting a little bit better clarity regarding planning and getting that information out. Now I am Carl, I'm having a problem. I can't get the live chat to scroll now. Here we go. Okay, Bart Robinson, good morning, everyone. Ken S. Hi, Doc. Does metformin and glipizide slow down the process of ridding a fatty liver of sugar and fat during a fast? I don't know, Ken. That's actually a really good question. I will tell you this, fatty liver, for those of us, for yourself, you obviously know a little bit more about it. Fatty liver is far more common than we thought. I've got several videos on it. It's very much related to insulin resistance. It is beginning to, in many ways, outstrip alcohol and other types of cirrhosis in terms of damage to the liver, and has become a very serious issue. It is related to the obesity epidemic, the insulin resistance pre-diabetes epidemic. Bottom line, at least for everything I'm aware of, the best way to treat fatty liver is to treat the insulin resistance. So from my perspective, the patients that I have with this condition are using metformin. Hope that helps. Z50, Z6, Mr. Joe Riley, Mr. LP(a). Niacin reduced my last score of 450 to 373. Excellent, and that is a very typical thing. Thank you so much, Z50, Z6, for sharing that. Again, LP(a) is a far bigger deal than, as I said, it's been a dirty little secret. Old Alabama Gardener, glad to see you today. Is LP(a) a test I should be asking my doc for? I would, Old Alabama Gardener, you've shared that you've been a patient of mine. You and I, those are standard in my tests, and I did not see a significant, I let any of my patients know. I screen all my patients for LP(a). And B, when we find that becomes a major part of our discussion for your assessment and care. So based on that, I don't remember your exact number, obviously, right now, but based on that, I don't think you had a problem there. Yes, but we all should be starting to push our docs, because our docs don't read a lot of docs don't read the New England Journal on a regular basis. I had to be, I found out from somebody else who told me, even though I get the journal. We need to be pushing docs now to start testing for this, because there's some even treatments that they would agree to on the horizon. As I mentioned, and as Z50, Z6 mentioned, niacin has worked. That's why I've been testing for it from day one. And there's been the assumption in the standard medical community that is, if you don't wipe out LP(a) entirely, you're not doing any good. That's not really true. Those of us who watch inflammation can watch and see people that were having inflammation associated with LP(a). You get that 20 to 40% decrease in LP(a) with niacin, and the inflammation tended to calm down. So again, yes, this is something we need to be pushing the standard community docs on. Okay, Robert Pinsky, how much metformin do you recommend for prediabetes? I'll usually start my pre-diabetics, try to get them to 500 milligrams twice a day. Most of us need to start with split pills, smaller amounts, either in the morning or at night, because 20% of us can have gas, maybe even nausea, a little bit of diarrhea. The vast majority of that goes away. There is a rare genetic subpopulation that continues to have problems with metformin. I've had, I think, one patient that just gave it up. I've had several patients that continue to have problems with it, but they will go along at lower doses. You can go up to a gram twice a day, 1,000 milligrams twice a day. Bob McWilliam, could you clarify niacin doesn't do that? Oh, niacin doesn't reliably cut LP(a) to 80%, or down by 80%. I think that question had to do with my comment on the slide. The higher doses of the experimental antisense drugs are hitting an 80% reduction in LP(a). And niacin doesn't do that. Like I said, niacin has done that in a couple of patients. I remember one patient where it knocked it out 80%, but it doesn't reliably do that. So ML, hey, Dr. Brewer, Mike in San Diego. Just want to say what a great job David did in Anaheim. Thank you so much, Mike, for giving us that feedback. We've gotten a lot of good feedback from David's CIMT tour event in Anaheim a couple of months ago. Also, I wanted to ask you about your thoughts on the study showing vitamin C was not effective on sepsis that came out this week. I hate to admit, I'm like a whole lot of guys that I'm criticizing, not reading the whole journal and being aware. Thank you for making me aware. I didn't know about the article. I will say this: there's a big fan club of vitamin C for heart attack and stroke prevention. That's all based on the Linus Pauling theory. It's a great theory, but when you look at the science, it just hasn't panned out. Bob Weiss, good morning from the North Georgia mountains. Good morning. My grandmother's family came from that area. I can't remember, something Georgia. Anyhow, that was back in the days when railroad was a big deal, and they lived right next to the railroad tracks. Little Viking coach, have you hit the thumbs up today? I hope that you're asking the other guys, and you know, I'm supposed to remind people to hit the thumbs up, and I forget to do all that. We're trying to market and get our information out there a little bit better, but and you're supposed to mention hit like, refer it. I just can't remember to do all that because I'm really focused on trying to get the content. But thank you very much, Little Viking Coach, for reminding us. Oh, Z50, Z20, Z6. I am Joe Riley. Oh, Joe, I didn't recognize your email tag there. Thank you for joining us. And folks, as I was talking about Joe, he's right there and he's commenting. So let's go back to what you said. The niacin reduced my last score of 450 to 373. So major improvement just with niacin alone. Thank you again for sharing that, Joe. And folks will say, well, wait a minute, Brewer, you said Joe's LP(a) was world-class, 800 to 1,000. It was at one point. That was before Joe and I started working together. Okay, Albert Kwong, is combining Crestor with Enduracin a concern for muscle breakdown? I don't think so. We do that with a lot of patients. It's a standard of treatment within our practice. And no, we've not seen problems with it. Mr. Dave, what are the side effects of niacin? The biggest and most common one is flushing. I actually got a little flushing today from my own niacin drug. Back in the days when you just took regular niacin, and some people still do that. I tried it for a while, and I remember sitting in a, I think it was a church or something, but I remember I felt like I was a scalping victim. It felt like my whole head was blowing off with just this intense fire, and I had to stop. I mean, I could not take it. That is the most common thing. Now, you'll see YouTube comments on this channel and other places where people say, oh, I love that flush. Well, if you love it and you can do it, that's great. But there are a couple, so there's been a lot of focus on trying to decrease that flushing. One of them was a chemical called lipoprotein, L-A-P-O-P-R-I-A-N-T, lipoprotein. I'm blanking on the name of the drug company. There was a drug company, they're based on 42nd Street in Manhattan, one of the well-known names. They had a lipoprotein niacin combination, and they did a world-class trial on it and expected to just, you know, do the victory lap with a whole bunch of new sales, and it blew up. It didn't work at all. And what actually happened was, it appears that the lipoprotein when it decreases when it does away with the flush from niacin, also did away with whatever was helping decrease the cardiovascular risk. So that didn't work. So what did the medical community do? Well, in America, the response of the medical community was just to throw the baby out with the bathwater. They said, well, niacin doesn't work. No, it wasn't that niacin doesn't work. It was that niacin treated with and combined with lipoprotein doesn't work. There are a couple of versions of niacin that we know does work. I've got no financial arrangements with either one of these groups. One of them is Rugby, R-U-G-B-Y, and the other one is Enduracin, E-N-D-U-R-A-C-I-N. We're trying to develop something with Enduracin because they have been the best tolerated product where we can make it more easily available. You can get it right now on Amazon. The thing about Enduracin is they have a wax matrix process. So you get a wax matrix within the pill, and you've got the little pockets of niacin within it. So it slows that down. What happens reliably? You still get the niacin impact, but it slows down the release. And I'm like all the other patients that I've dealt with so far using it, except a few. A few will still get intolerable flushes, but the vast majority of them do like I do. You get sort of a little flush and tingle, not much of a bad one at all. It happens every month or two. And then it lasts about 5 minutes, and then you never notice it again. So that's the big thing. You can also get some gastrointestinal problems with niacin. One of my family members had that problem, had to stop it. But that's pretty unusual. And I'm going to cut that and end there on the discussion with niacin. Is Berberine effective, and what are the names of the CBD you've talked about recently? Berberine is effective. Actually, I've got a couple of videos on Berberine. Just Google Ford Brewer YouTube Berberine, and you'll see that, yes, we cover it in much greater depth. The CBD is, it's Laura's, I'm blanking on Laura's last name. Darn, I've got videos on it and I'm trying to remember. Just give me a quick second. Pardon my unconventional walking away from the screen for a second, but here it is. I use it at night. It's Homestead Alternatives, full spectrum hemp extract. And that's what I use. And again, the CBD oil is a whole nother different, interesting story about 3 guys at the National Institutes of Health developed a patent on CBD oil for decreasing inflammation within the brain. Very, very interesting story. If you haven't seen that, check it out on our other videos. Z50, Z6, okay, Joe Riley, new handle, got it. Robert Pinsky, does long-term use of niacin cause liver damage? There's a lot of focus on liver damage, and it has been reported. Yes, you can see it, and yes, it's more associated with niacin where other chemicals have been added. Bottom line, at the end of the day, it's sort of like statins. It's sort of like aspirin when indicated. It's sort of like driving a car. It's sort of like flying in an airplane. You pay your money, you take your risks. If you don't have any cardiovascular risks, I don't recommend taking niacin because there are some problems associated with it. But if you have significant Lp(a), I clearly would recommend it. A lot of folks that have low HDL, obviously we want to focus on the carbs in the diet, but niacin is the only thing that's been shown, the only supplement, or there's been no medication that increases HDL. But again, niacin increases it. There's nothing that has such an impact on our cholesterol panel like as a supplement like niacin. So we use it a lot. I personally use it. OAG, Old Alabama Gardener. I just did Google search for LP-little-a tests and found one at healthlabs.com for 49 bucks. Well, good. Thank you for making folks aware. Edward K. O'Brien, are the LP-little-a numbers you are referring to milligrams or nanomoles? Oh, gosh. That's a great question. And I know people get focused on that. I turn around and do the same thing. Somebody was asking me about K2 and I was getting focused on milligrams versus micrograms myself. I apologize. I don't have that information. Z50 to Z6, Joe Riley, I take Enduracin. Okay, no flush problems. Roger Dodger, warfarin taker for 10 years, am doomed for calcification. Roger Dodger, you may want to, one thing I would make sure that for all of us is make sure that we don't have subtle insulin resistance that's just not been diagnosed. Old Alabama Gardener shared on this channel that he and his docs had been watching his blood sugars for years. They were pretty comfortable that they were okay. After watching this channel, he went ahead and decided to do some of the testing and found out he had not only an insulin resistance problem, he had full-blown diabetes. So he's actually doing great now, just like so many other patients that I have. Just like Jason Fung says, you can revert, you can't really reliably change somebody's pancreas and how their cells respond to insulin, but you can reverse all of the problems and effects associated with insulin resistance and even diabetes by doing the right lifestyle changes. So we've gotten through most of the comments for right now, I think, and I'm going to go back into some discussion about the events. So we've got as we've mentioned before, we've got some information out there about the Orlando boot camp. It's 1 day instead of 2 days. By the way, we've had a 50% discount on it. That's going away in about a week. So a lot of calls coming in regarding, actually, one of the biggest patterns of calls that we get is, well, this thing I mentioned about labs, and they say, well, you're doing labs with it. You must be doing finger sticks the day of, and you're not going to get much out of that. Well, if we were doing finger sticks the day of, we wouldn't be getting much out of that. We actually do some finger sticks, but the only thing that we're getting from those when we do those at events is to just help people understand how to do a finger stick for glucose. And the whole discussion of dawn effect comes up out of that. The labs that we're talking about, though, are totally different. They're Quest labs, Quest reference lab. You know, Quest purchased Cleveland Heart Lab, CHL. And Cleveland Heart Lab has a full-blown inflammation panel, OGTT. And after me going back and forth with them for over a year, they finally started even including an insulin response. So on a practical basis, we're getting a reference lab Kraft insulin survey. So we'll talk about that part in just a minute. The Quest labs are everywhere. So how does the process work? We have a few patients that are way out in the boonies, and 1 or 2 out of what, 500 or more over the past few years has had to travel like 45 minutes. The vast majority of people have a Quest lab draw site within 15 to 20 minutes of where they live. So what happens is this, when you register with us, we give you for the event, included in the price of the event is all these labs, and we'll go over what all those labs are in just a second. So we send you that lab request, then you go to the website, find your local Quest draw site, and you set up an appointment. You fast the 8 hours, excuse me, before going in, and you get all of these tests, which we'll talk about in just a minute. Quest results those tests usually within about a week, 2 weeks, and they post it on the patient portal. the folks that have access are us, because I'm the doctor that ordered the labs, and you, because you're the patient. You can bring them to the event if you want. If you're getting the evaluation component of the event, you and I will be talking one-on-one after the event regarding your specific lab results. So that's how that works. Now, what's included in those labs? Inflammation panel, OGTT, insulin survey and response, cholesterol and lipid panel. With cholesterol fractionation, particle count, bell curve graph on it, and this is the bell curve over here. I'm going to spend a minute describing that bell curve in just a minute, because it's a very interesting thing that most people see, they look at and they say, I'm not going to understand this, and just move on. It's not that difficult to understand, and again, we'll go over in just a second. CBC, complete blood count with differential, metabolic panel, homocysteine, vitamin D, and other basic stuff. So you're getting a full-blown $1,000 and up evaluation as part of the event, plus a full day boot camp type of event where not only are you, instead of interacting for an hour with me, we're going for 8 hours. And you're meeting other people who are realizing they can do this too. They can use this information to get assurance that they're not going to have a heart attack or stroke. So let's go over this lipid subclass profile. This is actually the profile of one of my patients who had FH, familial hypercholesterolemia. So it's a little bit of a weird one. Most of these usually peak, this right bell curve peaks way up here. His didn't, and won't go any deeper into that point, but just to make, there's other topics that I want to discover. I want to walk you through how to navigate this. First of all, the vertical is the lipoprotein mass. The second, the horizontal is the particle diameter. So if you're looking at mass versus diameter, as you can guess, HDL, higher mass, lower diameter, is going to be this population, and LDL, lower mass, higher diameter, is going to be over here. The other thing to look at is this. They give you a little cheat sheet to look at. If your peak is down here, that's not good. If your peak for that HDL population is over here over the green, then that's good. Same thing with LDL. And you may remember, for both HDL and LDL, you want the larger particles. In fact, small, dense LDL is where you get challenges. A bigger risk than having a whole lot of large, fluffy LDLs. So for this patient, what did it look like? Again, for both of his peaks, they occurred in a better area, over the green. With most of my patients, I'll tend to see problems where the LDL peak is coming in here or here. That when the peak does come in over here, then that's what the lab will call a type B LDL pattern. I hope that this has been helpful in terms of understanding a little bit more about that fractionation process and the fractionation activity. Now, let me just, actually, let me go back. I would like to mention one other thing while we're in the, in here. As I mentioned before at the very beginning, we've got the CIMT Access Tour. Birmingham's coming up February 8th. We haven't had that many takers. If we have to cancel it, as you remember, we have to get like at least 10. If we don't get 10, we might have to cancel. If we do, the people that have registered will probably be able to go to David's private event the day before. Won't be able to attend the event, but we'll be able to get their CIMT. And again, if you're anywhere within driving range of Birmingham, think about that. Now, the way to access it, actually, I'm going to come back out. Basically, you go to the membership page. I screwed that up. Hold on just a second. You go to the membership page on our website, and you go to, on this area on the left, you find the CIMT Access Tour. I'll actually take us back out now and show you how to do that. The other way that you can be informed of every one of the CIMT events that's coming up and available for you is to sign up for cardiorisk.us/forward. I may have that in here. Yes, that's right here, cardiorisk.us/forward. Now let's go back and let me set up a different share, and I will walk you through that access real quick. I'm showing you my whole screen. Let me pull up PrevMed website. No, that's not it. That's where we're using incognito to track some, get some websites off of. Okay, so if you go to our website, prevmedheartrisk.com, let me just do that here, and I'll walk you through the steps. This is our site, PrevMed, and we've got the, above the fold, we've got stethoscope and the keyboard indicating that we can do great medicine for you with over the internet, and we do 95%, more than that, more like 98% of our patients elect to do the remote. Although we'll be happy to meet with you face to face here in Lexington, and we meet with the conference attendees face to face wherever the conference is. Louisville recently, and Orlando on February 28th. Then under the fold we have the digital courses: insulin resistance, cardiovascular inflammation, plaque evaluation course, and so on. Let's go up to the membership login, and then you go to, well, you might have to register with your email. If you do, then you'll get through here, and then you'll see CIMT events right here. There's a tiny little gray arrow, which is hard to see for my eyes, my old eyes. And here's the CIMT event schedule. So we have PrevMed. These PrevMed events are events where you can get a full-blown evaluation. February 28th in Orlando, April 17th in Central Western Ohio. I'm doing an event for a couple of dental societies there, and they've agreed to open it up to YouTubers if you want to come in and get a full-blown evaluation as well. And sometime around July and August, Clyde's actually going to be coming over for the Philippines, and we expect to do an event there with a full-blown evaluation. Then the Brewer Minds events are where David goes out, gives his own presentation, usually to his own client, a company or a dental society. And then the next day, he will stay and do an event for our YouTubers. So February 8th, Birmingham, February 15th, Austin, Texas, April 4th, Detroit, Michigan, April 25th, Rochester, New York, May 2nd, Memphis, Tennessee, July 25th in Portland. You know, Clyde, we need to clarify if that's Portland, Maine or Portland, Oregon. I think it's Portland, Maine. Or Carl, could you let Clyde know that? So let me go back out now and see if we've had any other comments. Ola Alabama Gardner, Dr. Brewer, what do you think of finger stick blood tests? Are they any good, meaning accurate? Well, it totally depends on which ones you get. Most of them, I think it's Contour, for example, just really not great It may not be contour. There's several of them. Most of them that you get out there are not going to be very good. I'll tell you who's a good judge on those. That's Richard Bernstein. He's like the father of diabetes self-care. Very interesting story. In the 80s, he still had LDL and 30s and 40s, and then HDL like 80s or 90s or above. He, despite the fact that he is a known serious brittle type 1 diabetic, he actually got the first, that's a long story, but so you have to be careful. And Bernstein, for example, says the lifestyle, the freestyle is a very, very good one. Now, here's a clue. If the strips on the blood test are cheap, it's probably not a good one. But I wholeheartedly recommend people start getting this, wading through the challenges of getting the right one and starting to see what's going on with your blood sugar. Otherwise, the vast majority of us are flying blind. That's why the CDC says there are 80 million American adults with prediabetes. In other words, burning your arteries right now, and 72 million don't know it. 90% don't know it. If there's one thing I could change in my life, it would be that one item. There are a lot of similar problems. For example, the vast majority of people that have atrial fib don't know it. But when you look overall on a population basis, nothing is killing and disabling us like the fact that so many of us have insulin resistance, prediabetes, and don't know it. And it's so easy to find out. You don't even need a doctor's prescription to get these finger stick tests. The UCLA did a study a couple of years ago, and they said, you know what? The CDC numbers are way low. Over half of adults, 30 and above, have this problem. Well, I will tell you this, both of them are way low because both of them are just using fasting glucose and hemoglobin A1C. Neither one of them are using something like an OGTT, let alone a Kraft insulin survey. And so they're still missing a huge number of people that have prediabetes, are burning their arteries, inflaming their arteries. And guess what? Doctors think that it's normal and routine for people to have plaque in their arteries as they age. Well, sure it is if it's normal and routine for people to not know that their blood sugar is going up and they're not doing anything about it because they're flying blind because they've never tested. So thank you very much, OAG, for bringing it up. Joe Riley, I'm at Niacin 1,000 twice a day. That's what I'm at too. That's the dose, the recommended dose. Eradicator 7, my father has max CIMT of 1.6, non-smoker. What statin at which dosage would you recommend? Well, it's a great question. I'll just do generic comments about statins. I don't recommend Lipitor. It works. All of the statins do well at decreasing LDL, but LDL is not really the big bad actor that most people think it is. Even the standards of medicine, the ACC, AHA, American College of Cardiology, American Heart Association, even those standards committees are saying, guys, will you quit just looking for a cut point for LDL? Used to be 100, then for some people now they're saying 70. And docs just want to go, docs are human like everybody else. They just want to do what's quick, especially in this insurance-driven 7-minute per visit world. Even the ACC, AHA is saying, look, sit down, have a broader risk discussion. That's exactly what people should be doing. But again, we're not doing that. That's what we do with our events. They're typically, in our evaluations, it's typically an hour discussion. Now, so back to the statins question, Lipitor does decrease LDL. It decreases inflammation somewhat, but for females and for people with insulin resistance, it tends to not impact inflammation as much. So if the real purpose of statins is, as I believe, to calm down inflammation, not so much to manage LDL in most patients, then you've wiped out the vast majority of people for whom you have a good benefit if you're not impacting females, and most of all, not impacting people with insulin resistance, because that's what causes the problem in the first place. So don't use Lipitor. We used to, when Crestor was really expensive, we used to just, we'd use KIF6 to try to figure out, could we use simvastatin or pravastatin or one of the other statins, or could we go with, did we have to pay extra for Crestor? Well, Crestor has lost its patent now and has gotten much more affordable. So for a couple of years, Crestor was the go-to statin. And for the vast majority of patients, these small doses, 5 milligrams per day or less. We even have a couple of patients who are on like 2.5 milligrams once a week. And the once a week dosage of statins, or of Crestor anyway, for you statin haters out there, and there are a lot, the once a week dosage has been shown by clinical trials to have an impact, a positive impact. And so you can go with several different options in between. 2.5 twice a week, 2.5 every other day, etc. Now, some of that's changing though, just over the past few months. And it's with new well, not so new, but fairly new medicine called pitavastatin. The brand name in the US is Livalo. One of my patients couldn't tolerate Crestor, but tolerated Livalo very well. He found a source, Canada Pharmacy Online, I think, and started getting it from there. He discussed that at one of our events, and everybody wanted that. So we had a mass transition of patients. I've announced that and done several videos on this issue. And true to the adage that the cobbler's children have no shoes, we got most of those folks all transitioned over to the Canadian pharmacy, and I finally got it a couple of months ago. The cost now through the Canada Pharmacy Online is like, I think it's $100 for 3 months worth of Pivasta. It's the pitavastatin brand that they use. Now, I also did for those of you who are worried about, oh, well, that's that's going to Canada, that's a major problem. I did a whole video on that, what it looked like, there's an Indian location where that's being made. And then somebody commented on the video, and I think they're right. And that is, for those of you who think that you're being safer by staying in America, the American sellers are getting it from the same place that the Canada Online Pharmacy and the others are getting. So it's all an interesting shell game to make a whole lot of money off of the American economy by Big Pharma. Okay, Edward K. O'Brien, we talked that. Joe Riley, no flush problems with the niacin, warfarin taker. What is the best method to reduce insulin resistance? Well, that's a great question, Mr. Dave. The video is getting a little bit long in the tooth. I will just make a couple of quick comments, respond to a couple of things, and then move on. So, and then we'll close out. So, there's multiple components to the method for reducing insulin resistance. The first one, which we can't do, is get younger. There's one driver of insulin resistance that's stronger than anything else. And when you start looking at, just look at the rest of the world, it's old people get heart attacks and strokes, right? Yes, and it's because aging is the major driver on a population basis to get insulin resistant. And that's resistance to insulin by the cell membrane receptors in your muscle and liver membranes. Now let's get practical though. The number one treatable problem, and it's not treatable by the doc, it's only treatable by the patient, by you, is weight, body fat mass. So it's not specifically weight, because again, if you're built like Mr. Universe, and you can have a BMI of 30 and have a body fat mass of 8%, like Arnold Schwarzenegger did back in the 80s. Or more likely, you can have a whole bunch of that as fat. We used to think that fat was a simply inert, non-impactful energy storage tissue. Nothing could be further from the truth. What we have found is that, and that's sort of the royal way, researchers have found that is that fat creates adipokine, cytokine, a lot of things, leptins, a lot of things that drive insulin resistance. So major successes that I get, the most dramatic successes I get, are people that start realizing they've got insulin resistance, they cut the carbs out of their diet, they start doing, closing that eating window from 16 hours of eating a day down to 8 or 4. And even some of them, like myself, will start adding a little bit of prolonged fasting. I talked to Todd Eldridge yesterday, and he said he started doing some 4-day fasting. He's lost, is it 45 pounds? You should see him, he looks great. So the combinations of fasting, dropping your carbs, closing that time-restricted feeding or time-restricted eating, decreasing that body fat. When you decrease that body fat, that is the most reliable. Nothing else compares to decreasing body fat. Exercise doesn't compare, metformin doesn't compare, insulin injections don't compare. None of these things compare to impacting this, like getting rid of that body fat mass. Exercise does help, better sleep helps, some of the other things that we talked about. OAG, Old Alabama Gardener, yep, I'm doing great, made major changes in my eating. Susie Penguin would love it if there was an event in the Midwest sometime. Where are you talking about? Driving distance from Omaha. We actually had one in, was it Tulsa, Oklahoma? We had one in Oklahoma a few years ago. Just make enough requests. If we start getting enough requests and it becomes clear that we can do it without losing money, we'll be happy to do it. Roger Dodger, I took warfarin 10 years and my recent calcium score was 0. CIMT not too bad either. Switched to Eliquis now. That's what I take, Susie. And why do I take Eliquis? Because I've got atrial fib. Why do I have atrial fib? Well, I got a 4q25 gene from my mother and a 4q25 gene from my dad. That means I'm homozygous 4q25, and that's the atrial fib gene. So why would I take, and I diagnose, obviously. I use a little thing called iCardia. It was an electrode hooked to my iPhone to diagnose my own. Obviously, I went and saw my own interventional cardiologist. He wanted to do an ablation. I know the genetics on that, and I know that those ablations last 2 years at best, 2 to 3 years, and then they come back. My mother went the other route. She agreed to have it. She's had 4 or 5 ablations. They keep coming back. And it's because with those genetics, your muscle cells in your atria are going to continue to turn into conduction cells. Won't go any deeper in that. That might have gotten a little bit geeky for some folks, but the bottom line is, if you've got atrial fib, number one, most people, just like most people that have insulin resistance don't know it, most people that have atrial fib don't know it. Now, here's the reason I went into all that detail, and here's the takeaway point. There was just an article in, I think it was the New England Journal too, the Apple Watch, the new Apple Watch, I think it's Series 5, has the cardio component, and they're discovering a lot of people that had atrial fib that didn't know it. And the reason for it is atrial fib is what we call paroxysmal. It comes and then it goes away. And then it comes in and it goes away. And a lot of times it'll happen when you're asleep, or even when you have episodes. Some people just don't feel it. So so they did Holter monitors for 2 or 3 weeks where they would try to find it. Even then, sometimes you didn't find it, but the Apple Watch does appear to be a big deal for this thing. It's been criticized because most people say, well, most people that use the Apple Watch are young people and they don't really have this problem. You're finding problems in people that don't really have it. Well, not my population. 40, 50, 60-year-olds, I would recommend getting an Apple Watch. And unfortunately, I have no financial, unfortunately for me and for the channel too, we have no financial links to them, but we'll cover that a little bit later, that New England Journal article. Susie Penguin, thank you, Dr. Brewer. I had atrial fib, atrial flutter earlier last year, and my brother died suddenly of heart failure last year at 59. I'm sorry to hear that, Susan, but thank you very much for sharing that. It's when those of us who are involved with this actually share the problems that we've had, it helps teach others, because others are not going to get, relying on that 7-minute visit with your internist, family practitioner, cardiologist, is not going to get us the information that we need to protect our own health, our own life, protect us from disability and death. We're basically, it's caveat emptor, buyer beware. We need to know a little bit more about how to prevent heart attacks and strokes, because relying on our doc to do that in that kind of environment is a recipe for the failure, death, and disability that we've been suffering. So glad I found your channel website. Thank you very much, Susie Penguin. I appreciate that. Susie Penguin, I got Apple Watch 5 and love it. Okay, well, thank you for that response. And guys, yes, I've gone over an hour. For a while there, I was trying to keep it for half an hour for the people that, come in and find it later. And once you start seeing these long time periods, that's the first thing you look at and you say, I don't have an hour to watch this. Well, then I started getting some comments from other folks that said, you know what, I'll go out and run, or I want to listen to this when I'm driving from A to Z. I'd like to have some longer videos. So we're trying to mix it up a little bit. We've got some short 2 to 5 minute videos. We've got our old standard 8 to 15 minute videos. And with these YouTube lives, we're getting hour-long videos. So we're trying to package it in a way that that works for you. Thank you so much for, well, we've got one other question popping in, XXX. Dr. Brewer, what are the alternatives to Lp(a) besides niacin and apheresis? Well, 6X, I think you missed the first 10 to 15 minutes of the video. The major one is niacin. Carnitine is so-so, but it's a treatment. Managing your other risk factors like a statin if you need it. All the biggest thing, and let me just say this: Lp(a) is similar to FH. People think, oh, if you got Lp(a), you're doomed. Oh, if you got FH, you're doomed. No, you're not. These are both very treatable things, and by far, if they were the most powerful driver of heart attack and stroke, you'd see 20, 30, 40-year-olds having heart attack and stroke because they had Lp(a) or because they have FH. There is one subpopulation of FH that has heart attacks and strokes when they're 20, 30, and 40-year-olds, and that's the homozygous FH population. I'm not going to get into that. What I am going to say, though, is I've got plenty of Lp(a) patients. I've got plenty of FH patients, and they still tend to do well until, guess what creeps in? Insulin resistance. So bottom line, best treatment for any heart attack and stroke prevention is insulin resistance detection, awareness, and treatment. Just back to your specific question, the first part of this presentation, 6X, was about a new article that came out in the New England Journal on a type of medication that we've been waiting for a long time. It's called the antisense medications. Rather than repeat all that, what I would suggest is that you wait until this gets posted, go back, watch the first 15 minutes of the video. Thank you very much for your interest. Yes, did miss it early since I'm in India, and received the notification and I got from my sleep. Well, listen to this. This 6X is from in India, received the notification and got up from sleep. Thank you so much, and pardon my earlier tone. I really appreciate your interest. And yes, what you should do is, again, when this is done, go back and look at the rest of it. Also, I've got, I think, at least half a dozen videos on Lp(a). So you can get a much deeper dive in Lp(a) by looking through our videos. In addition, Clyde's starting to set up a link where people can put questions, and we'll try to respond to those. That's to happen in the future kind of thing. 6X, very insightful. I don't have insulin resistance. Good, I'm glad to hear that. And my question, let me tell you something. I get about 100. If you look at 100 people, I'll get 100 people tell me I don't have any insulin resistance problems. About 90 of them will have it. They just didn't know how to test for it. So be aware, be very afraid of insulin resistance, and keep a lookout for it. 6X, if you want, you can also email myhealth@prevmedheartrisk.com. myhealth@prevmedheartrisk.com. You can find it on our internet, and you can get other questions into me. We try to respond to those. Amy Penguin, thank you, Dr. Byrne, God bless. Peter Johnson, I'm in China on a VPN. Thank you very much. We've had more and more people join in from China, and that means it's really early or late for you. Thank you so much for joining. I tell you what I would love to do. Janice and I are taking a trip to China in a couple of months. I would love to start up a program in China and India for that matter. Clyde and I have talked a couple of times about setting up something for the Philippines. I currently see patients in the Middle East, Israel, Brazil, Australia, England, New Zealand. We've got patients all over the world. Some of the hardest hit populations are in India and China. So thank you guys for joining. And I am going to sign out. Thank you again to the rest of you for your interest in what we're doing. It's what makes it worthwhile.